The Galactic Council had learned to fear humans long before any war began. This fear did not come from weapons or ships or technology. It came from something far more simple and far more terrible. It came from watching humans be humans. Ambassador Verkith of the Sylvani Collective remembered the first human diplomatic team that visited the council station. He was a being of great age and wisdom. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had watched species evolve and go extinct. Nothing had prepared him for Elisa Monroe. She was a small human female with brown hair and a constant smile. She walked into a chamber filled with 17 of the most dangerous predator species in the known galaxy. Any sane creature would have shown fear. The room contained beings with venomous fangs, razor claws, and psychic abilities that could crush a mind like paper. Lisa Monroe shook hands with all of them. She touched the mandibles of the insectoid Krethful. She complimented the scales of the reptilian Verdash. When a massive Krethful warrior named Grath tried to scare her by extending his poison spines and hissing, she simply tilted her head and said the spines were beautiful. Grath had been so confused that he sat down and said nothing for the rest of the meeting. Verkith had thought this was amusing at first. He assumed humans were simply too stupid to understand danger. But over the next 3 galactic cycles, he learned the truth. Humans understood danger perfectly well. They simply did not care about it the way other species did. The humans became trading partners with the Council. They established colonies on worlds that other species had abandoned as too harsh. They sent scientists to study phenomena that had killed researchers from a dozen other civilizations. And they built a military. The Sylvani studied human soldiers with great interest. What they found made no sense. Human soldiers were not genetically modified to be stronger or faster. They did not have cybernetic implants that enhanced their abilities. They possessed no natural armor or venom or telepathy. By galactic standards, they were soft, slow, and fragile. And yet they kept winning. The first major test came when the Mortith swarm attacked the joint colony on Epsilon 7. The Mortith were a hive species that had destroyed entire civilizations. They attacked in waves of thousands, overwhelming their enemies through sheer numbers. Their drones felt no pain and no fear. They existed only to kill and consume. 3,000 Mortith drones descended on Epsilon 7. The colony had a mixed population of humans, Sylvani, and Velkari. The total military force was small. Most of the soldiers were from the Velkari, a species known for their tactical minds and advanced weapons. But it was the humans who held the line. Sergeant Kevin Marsh was a man of 32 years. He had brown skin, short black hair, and calm brown eyes that never seemed to blink during combat. He commanded a squad of 12 Marines. When the Mortith attack began, he had been eating lunch. Kevin put down his food, picked up his rifle, and walked to the defensive wall like he was going to a normal day of work. The battle lasted 19 hours. The Velkari fell back after 6 hours. Their ammunition was depleted and their soldiers were exhausted. The Sylvani retreated after 10 hours. Their defensive positions had been overrun, and they had taken severe casualties. Kevin Marsh and his 12 Marines held their section of the wall for all 19 hours. The Mortith came in waves. The first wave was 500 drones. Kevin's squad killed them all. The second wave was 800. The Marines killed those too. By the 10th hour, they had run out of standard ammunition. By the 12th hour, they had used all their emergency supplies. So they improvised. Corporal Danny Santos ripped a metal beam from a collapsed building and used it as a club. Private First Class Maria Lopez built explosive traps from mining equipment. Kevin Marsh himself picked up the severed limb of a Mortith drone and used its sharp edge as a blade. When reinforcements finally arrived, they found Kevin and 9 surviving Marines still standing on that wall. They were covered in blood, both their own and the enemy's. 3 of them had wounds that should have killed them. Danny Santos had a hole in his chest, so large you could see daylight through it. He was still fighting. The rescue team's commander, a Valkyrie named Zethra, asked Kevin how they had survived. Kevin looked at her with those calm brown eyes and said, "We didn't have permission to die yet." Zethra did not understand. She asked what he meant. Kevin explained that no one had told them to retreat. No one had given them orders to fall back. So they stayed. They would have stayed until the last one of them was dead. That was simply what they did. Zethra was a high commander in the Valkyrie War Academy. She had studied military tactics for 200 years. She had seen courage and determination in many species, but she had never seen anything like this. She returned to her academy and requested all available information on human military doctrine. She studied their training methods, their combat history, their psychological profiles. What she learned kept her awake at night. Humans trained their ordinary soldiers to function without sleep for days at a time. They trained them to ignore pain that would incapacitate other species. They trained them to keep fighting even when wounded, even when outnumbered, even when all hope was gone. They trained them to see death as an acceptable outcome as long as the mission was complete. These were not special soldiers. These were not elite warriors. These were their ordinary troops. The basic, standard, regular soldiers that every human military unit contained. Zethra found this horrifying. She asked her human liaison, Captain Derek Cole, about this. Derek was a friendly man with red hair and freckles. He smiled often and told jokes that Zethra did not understand. He seemed completely harmless, but when she asked about the Marines on Epsilon 7, his smile faded just slightly. "They did what Marines do," he said. "They held the line." Zethra pressed further. She asked if all human soldiers were like this. Derek said yes, more or less. Some were better than others, but the basic training was the same. Then she asked the question that had been bothering her for weeks. If these ordinary soldiers were so formidable, what about their elite forces? What about the soldiers who were considered exceptional, even by human standards? Derek's smile disappeared completely. He was quiet for a long moment. "You don't want to know about them," he said. Zethra insisted. She was a high commander. She needed to understand potential allies and potential threats. She demanded information. Derek looked at her with an expression she could not read. It might have been sadness. It might have been warning. "High Commander," he said, "our ordinary soldiers are what you saw on Epsilon 7. Our special forces are something else entirely. They are what we send when ordinary soldiers are not enough. They are what we use when we need something done that should be impossible. They are the ones who volunteer to go where no one else will go and do what no one else can do." He paused and looked out the window at the stars. "The galaxy already fears our regular troops. That fear is reasonable. But our special forces?" He shook his head slowly. "Pray you never have to see them in action." Zethra did not believe him. She thought he was exaggerating, trying to impress her with human pride. She was wrong. She would learn just how wrong in the years to come. 10 years passed after the Battle of Epsilon 7. The Mortis Swarm was quiet during this time. Many in the Galactic Council believed they had learned their lesson. Many thought the threat was over. They were fools. The Mortis did not retreat because they were defeated. They retreated because they were learning. For 10 years, they studied humans. They captured human soldiers when they could. They dissected them. They analyzed their weapons, their armor, their tactics. They learned everything they could about this strange soft species that had hurt them so badly. Then they evolved. The new Mortis drones were different from the old ones. They were larger, stronger, and smarter. Their shells were thicker, designed to resist human projectile weapons. Their claws were sharper, designed to cut through human armor. They could now fight for longer without rest, matching human endurance. The swarm had spent 10 years preparing for war. Now, they were ready. The second Mortith incursion began without any warning. The target was not some small colony this time. The target was Nexa Prime, the homeworld of the Velkari. It was one of the most important planets in Council space. Home to 3 billion beings, 2 million Mortith. Drones descended from the sky. The Velkari defense fleet was scattered across the sector, responding to what they now realized were fake distress calls. By the time they understood the trick, it was too late. The Mortith were already on the ground, tearing through cities, killing everything they found. I Commander Zethra was on Nexa Prime when the attack began. She was older now, her scales graying with age, but her mind was still sharp. She took command of what forces remained and established the defensive. Position in the capital city's government center thought it was not enough. Nothing would be enough. 2 million Mortith against a few thousand defenders. The math was simple and terrible. Zethra sent a desperate message to Earth. She requested immediate military help. She expected a polite refusal or perhaps a promise of future support. Earth was far away. No fleet could arrive in time. The response came in 6 hours. 3 human ships dropped out of hyperspace, above Nexa Prime. Just 3. The USS Valiant, the USS Horizon, and the USS Nightfall. They were not large ships. They carried perhaps 300 humans total. Zethra felt her hope die. 300 humans against 2 million Mortith? It was nothing. It was suicide. Then the dropships came down. The first humans to touch ground were not regular Marines. Zethra could see that immediately. They wore different armor, black and gray, with no unit markings or identification. They carried weapons she did not recognize. They moved differently than normal soldiers. Smooth and silent like shadows given form. There were only 24 of them. Their leader was a human male of medium height with gray eyes and a face that showed no emotion at all. His name was Captain Ben Harris, and he spoke so quietly that Zethra had to lean forward to hear him. "Hi, Commander," he said. "We need you to prepare for evacuation." Zethra stared at him. "Evacuation is impossible. There are 2 million Mortith between us and any safe zone." Ben Harris looked at his team. A female soldier named Sergeant Emmy Reeves was already assembling something from components she carried in her pack. It looked like a weapon, but no weapon Zethra had ever seen. Her scanners could not identify it. "Give us 4 hours," Ben Harris said. "Then walk out the front door." Before Zethra could respond, the 24 humans melted into the darkness of the ruined city. They made no sound. They left no trace. One moment they were there. The next moment they were gone. Zethra did not know what to do. She was a military commander with 200 years of experience. She had won battles against impossible odds. But this situation was beyond anything she had trained for done, so she watched. Her remaining sensors covered parts of the city. She could track some of what happened. Not all. Much of what occurred that night would never be recorded or understood. The Special Forces team split into smaller groups. They moved through the Mortith-occupied streets like ghosts. The Mortith had millions of drones spread across the city, watching every corner, patrolling every street. It should have been impossible to move without being detected. The humans moved anyway. Zethra watched as a group of 3. Humans approached a Mortith patrol of 50 drones. The humans did not hide. They did not run. They simply killed all 50 drones in less than 2 minutes, using weapons that made no sound and left no flash. Then they disappeared again. Another group found a Mortith breeding pool, a structure where new drones were grown. There were 5,000 drones guarding it. The humans killed none of them. Instead, they planted something inside the pool and left. 20 minutes later, the pool exploded. The 5,000 guards were buried under rubble. HFY counted 7 breeding pools destroyed in the first hour. By the second hour, the Mortith knew something was wrong. Their command structure was collapsing. Officers were dying. Communication lines were being cut. They tried to organize a response, but they could not find an enemy to respond to. The humans were everywhere and nowhere. They struck without warning and vanished without trace. They used the city itself as a weapon, collapsing buildings on drone concentrations, flooding tunnels where drones were hiding, starting fires that spread through Mortith positions. By the third hour, the Mortith were in chaos. Drones wandered without orders. Units fought among themselves out of confusion. The careful coordination that made the swarm so deadly had been shattered. HFY saw Amy Reeves on a sensor feed. The human female was alone on a rooftop, 2 kilometers from the government center. She assembled the strange weapon and pointed it at something. HFY could not see. Then she fired. The shot made no sound that HFY's sensors could detect. But somewhere in the city, a Mortith command beast exploded. These were the creatures that coordinated large groups of drones, giving them orders from the overmind. With each one destroyed, thousands of drones lost their direction. Amy Reeves killed 4 command beasts in 30 minutes. 4 shots. 4 kills. Each shot from a different location. By the 4th hour, Ben Harris appeared at the front entrance of the government center. He looked exactly as he had before, calm and quiet and showing no emotion. His armor had some new scratches on it. That was the only sign that he had been in combat. "The corridor is clear," he said. "Please proceed to the evacuation point." HFY walked out the front door. The streets that had been filled with 2 million Mortith were now quiet. Bodies of drones lay everywhere, thousands upon thousands of them. Buildings still burned. The air smelled of smoke and death, but the path was clear. HFY and her surviving staff walked 3 kilometers to the evacuation point without seeing a single living Mortith. The Special Forces team walked with them, surrounding them in a protective formation. Still silent and watchful, when they reached safety, HFY finally found the courage to ask the question that had been burning in her mind. "What are you?" Ben Harris looked at her with those gray eyes. "We are called Special Forces," he said. "Back home, anyway." The evacuation took another 12 hours. During that time, the full human force arrived. Regular Marines, dropships, and orbital support. They pushed the Mortith out of the capital and eventually off the planet entirely. But the battle was already won before they arrived. 24 humans had broken the back of a 2 million drone invasion force. They had done what armies could not do. High Commander HFY finally understood what Captain Derek Cole had meant all those years ago. She understood why he had warned her not to ask about special forces. She understood the fear in his eyes when he spoke of them. These were not soldiers in any sense, she understood. These were something else entirely, and they were on humanity's side. For the first time in her long life, HFY was grateful for human friendship. And for the first time, she truly understood what it meant to have humans as enemies. She hoped the rest of the galaxy would learn this lesson without having to experience it directly. Most of them would not be so lucky. The Galactic Council met 3 days after the liberation of Nexter Prime. Every major species sent their highest representatives. The chamber was full of beings from across the stars, all of them trying to understand what they had witnessed. Representative Torvin of the Krethful Dominion had watched the combat footage 17 times. His species were warriors. They had conquered 11 worlds. They feared nothing in the galaxy, but his hand shook as he activated the display screen. "I must show you what our sensors recorded," he said. His voice was not steady. "I must show you what humans call special forces. The footage played on the main screen. It showed a street in the capital city of Nexa Prime, filled with Mortith drones. There were hundreds of them, perhaps 1,000. Then the humans arrived. There were only 6 of them. They came from the shadows so quickly that the drones barely had time to react. In 43 seconds, all the Mortith were dead. The humans used blades, hands, and weapons that made no sound. They moved so fast that the footage seemed to skip frames. Then they vanished again, melting into the darkness as if they had never been there. The chamber was silent. They moved through solid walls, Torvin said. Our sensors show them entering buildings with no doors or windows. Ambassador Lisa Monroe stood at the human delegation's position. She had been called back from retirement to address the council's concerns. Her hair was gray now, and lines marked her face, but her eyes were the same as they had been decades ago. Calm, unafraid. Breaching charges, she explained. Small explosives that create new entrances. Standard equipment. Torvin showed another clip. A Mortith queen, the massive creature that controlled breeding operations, exploding from a shot that came from over 2 kilometers away. The queen had been inside a building, surrounded by walls and guards. They killed from impossible distances, Torvin said. Through solid structures. In complete darkness. Sniper teams, Lisa Monroe said. Thermal imaging allows them to see heat through walls. Armor-piercing rounds go through most materials. Another clip. A group of Special Forces soldiers disappearing from all sensor tracking for 4 hours while still engaged in active combat. They became invisible, Torvin said. Electronic countermeasures. Stealth technology. Training to avoid detection. The Krethvol representative slammed his clawed hand on his console. The sound echoed through the chamber. You keep saying these are just techniques, he shouted. Just tools. Just training. But Ambassador, we have seen your ordinary soldiers. We have studied them for decades. These special forces are not the same thing. They are something else. Something more. Lisa Monroe did not react to his outburst. She stood calm and still, watching him with those steady eyes. May I address the council directly? She asked. The chamber granted permission. Lisa Monroe walked to the center of the room, where all species could see and hear her clearly. She was a small human, old and frail by the standards of many species present. Yet somehow, standing there alone, she seemed larger than all of them. You are correct, Representative Torvin, she said. Our special forces are different from our regular military, but not in the way you think. She paused, looking around the chamber at the assembled representatives. Every species has variation. Some individuals are stronger than average. Some are faster. Some are smarter. Some are more determined. Humans are no different. We simply identified those exceptional individuals and asked them a question. Verkith of the Sylvani leaned forward. What question? Lisa Monroe's expression did not change, but something shifted in her voice. We asked them how far they were willing to go. The chamber was very quiet. Our special forces are volunteers, she continued. They choose to undergo training that breaks most to attempt it. They choose to push themselves past limits that would kill weaker individuals. They choose to sacrifice comfort, safety, sometimes their very lives, in service of something larger than themselves. She began to walk slowly around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each representative in turn. This is not genetic engineering. This is not cybernetic enhancement. This is not some secret technology that makes them superhuman. It is pure will. It is the decision to become something more than ordinary, made freely and paid for in blood and sweat and tears. She stopped in front of the Krethvol delegation. Your species produces great warriors, Representative Torvin. Warriors of strength and courage and skill. But your warriors fight because it is their nature. because they are born to it, because their biology drives them to combat. She turned to face the whole chamber again. Our special forces fight because they choose to. Every day, they wake up and make the choice again. They could stop. They could go home. They could live normal lives. But they choose not to. They choose the harder path. They choose the pain and the sacrifice and the danger because they believe in something strongly enough to give up everything else for it. The Sovani ambassador spoke. And what do they believe in? Lisa Monroe smiled for the first time. It was a small smile, but it transformed her face. Different things. Some believe in protecting the innocent. Some believe in defending their homes and families. Some believe in abstract ideals like freedom or justice. Some simply believe that there are things worth dying for, and they want to be ready when those things are threatened. She walked back to her position. You feared our ordinary soldiers because they would not stop fighting. You saw what happened at Epsilon 7. 12 Marines against 3,000 Mortith. 19 hours. They should have died. They should have retreated. They did neither. They stayed, and they fought, and they won because giving up was not an option they were willing to accept. She spread her hands. Our special forces are what happens when you take that determination and multiply it by a factor you cannot measure. They are not superhuman. They are the most human humans we produce. They are everything our species can be when we push ourselves to our absolute limits and then push further still. Representative Torvin had recovered some of his composure. Then these limits, he said. What are they? How far can a human go? Lisa Monroe looked at him for a long moment. We do not know, she said. Every time we think we have found the limit, someone exceeds it. Every time we believe something is impossible, someone proves us wrong. This is the nature of humanity. We are a species of limits that we refuse to accept. She turned to address the whole council one final time. You have seen what our special forces can do. You have seen 24 of them break an army of 2 million. But understand this. Those 24 came from our population of 12 billion. There are thousands more like them. And behind them, there are billions more who carry the same potential, even if they never develop it. The chamber was absolutely silent now. When you look at a human child, you are looking at a potential special forces operator. When you look at a human farmer or teacher or shopkeeper, you are looking at someone who could become what you saw on Nexa Prime, given the right circumstances and the right motivation. She sat down. This is what we are. This is what we have always been. And this is why, for the first time in galactic history, the Mortith swarm has something to fear. The council session ended soon after. No votes were taken. No decisions were made. The representatives returned to their homeworlds, carrying the weight of what they had learned. The humans were not just allies. They were not just trading partners. They were something the galaxy had never seen before. A species with no natural weapons had forged themselves into the deadliest force in known space, and they had done it through nothing more than pure, stubborn, terrifying will. The Mortith swarm had made a terrible mistake attacking the galaxy that humanity called home. Soon, they would understand just how terrible that mistake was. But by then, it would be far too late. The Mortith Overmind had lived for 40,000 years. It had consumed 17 civilizations across that time. It had evolved to survive every threat, adapt to every challenge, and overcome every obstacle that the universe had placed in its path, in all those millennia, across all those conquered worlds. The Overmind had never known fear. That changed 6 months after the Battle of Nexa Prime. The human coalition launched Operation Silent Thunder on a cold morning in January. There were no press announcements. There were no fleet movements that enemies could track. There was only a single encrypted transmission sent to 36 individuals scattered across human space. The message was simple. Report for duty. The hunt begins. The objective of the operation was equally simple. Find the Mortith Overmind at the heart of their territory. Kill it. End the war. This mission would not involve fleets of ships or armies of soldiers. Those would draw attention. Those would be detected and destroyed long before reaching the target. This mission required something smaller, something quieter, something that could move through enemy territory like a whisper through darkness. This mission required special forces. 36 operators were divided into 6 teams. Each team was inserted into Mortith space through different routes at different times. They had no support ships waiting for them. They had no backup forces ready to extract them. They had only their training, their equipment, and each other. Lieutenant Marcus Webb led Team 3. He was 41 years old, with 15 years of Special Forces experience before humanity ever made first contact with alien life. On Earth, he had operated in the most dangerous environments the planet had to offer. Jungles where every creature was deadly. Deserts where heat killed faster than bullets. Mountains were cold, and thin air turned the body against itself. Those places seemed almost pleasant compared to Mortith space. His team consisted of 5 other operators. Sergeant Tina Garrett was their explosives expert. She had once collapsed an underground bunker using only 3 ounces of specialized material. Corporal Chris Nolan handled communications. He could bounce signals off asteroid fields and make transmissions look like natural radiation. The other 3 members had no names in any official record. Their identities were classified above the level of most governments. Team 3 entered Mortith space through a dead system with no living planets. They traveled in a ship so small it barely registered on sensors, designed to look like natural debris drifting through the void. For the first week, they simply floated, watching and learning the patrol patterns of Mortith vessels. The Mortith controlled hundreds of systems. They had billions of drones spread across their territory. Every planet, every moon, every asteroid field was watched and defended. Moving through this space should have been impossible. Marcus Webb did not believe in impossible. The team began their journey inward. They moved slowly, carefully, spending days hidden in asteroid shadows or drifting in the radiation belts of gas giants. When Mortith patrols came close, they went completely silent, shutting down every system and waiting in cold darkness until the danger passed. 1 month into the mission, they encountered their first real obstacle. A checkpoint station blocked the only path to the next sector. The station was small but heavily armed, with scanning equipment that would detect any ship larger than a fist. The team could not go around it. They could not destroy it without alerting every Mortith in the sector. They could only go through it. Marcus ordered the team to suit up for vacuum work. They left their tiny ship hidden in an asteroid and crossed the space between using only their suits and small maneuvering jets. At that range, they were too small for the station's scanners to notice. They entered through a maintenance hatch that Mortith drones were too large to use. Inside, they found 40 guards and 20 technical workers. In 12 minutes, all 60 were dead, killed silently with blades and bare hands. Chris Nolan accessed the station's computers. He downloaded patrol schedules for the next 3 sectors. He sent false reports back to Mortith Command indicating everything was normal. Then the team left, and no one knew they had ever been there. This became the pattern for the next 3 months. They moved through checkpoint after checkpoint. They passed through systems swarming with millions of drones. They infiltrated stations and ships, taking what intelligence they needed and leaving no survivors to report their presence. The Mortith Overmind knew that something was wrong. Reports from the outer sectors were inconsistent. Patrols went missing without explanation. Stations fell silent. But the attacks came from so many different directions, in so many different ways, that the Overmind could not identify a single threat. It did not understand that it was being hunted by 6 separate teams, all converging on the same target. Team 3 reached the core system after 4 months of travel. The Overmind's world was a dead rock orbiting a dying star. Billions of drones covered its surface like a living carpet. Defensive stations filled orbit. Ships patrolled every approach. At the center of it all was the Overmind itself, a creature the size of a mountain, old beyond measure, connected to every drone in the swarm through some biological network that humans did not fully understand. Kill the Overmind, and the entire swarm would collapse. Getting to it would be the hardest thing any of them had ever done. The team spent 2 weeks observing from a hidden position on a captured asteroid. They mapped defenses. They identified patrol patterns. They found the weakness they needed. The Overmind's chamber was buried deep underground, protected by solid rock and billions of guards. But it needed to breathe. Ventilation shafts, each one barely wide enough for a human to crawl through, connected the chamber to the surface. The shafts were considered too small to be a threat. The Mortith had never encountered an enemy willing to spend 16 hours crawling through stone tunnels filled with toxic air and defensive traps. Had never encountered human special forces. The 6 members of Team 3 entered the shafts at midnight local time. They crawled in single file, moving inches at a time, breathing through filters that barely processed the poisonous atmosphere. Traps triggered around them. Blades swung the walls. Acid dripped from above. They avoided them all, using senses trained over years of practice to detect danger before it struck. 16 hours later, they emerged into the Overmind's chamber. The creature filled their vision. It was massive beyond comprehension, a mountain of flesh and chitin and pulsing organs. Its eyes, thousands of them, turned to look at the tiny humans who had invaded its sanctuary. "You cannot harm me," the Overmind broadcast, its voice filling their minds through some psychic ability. "I am eternal. I am the swarm. I have consumed civilizations beyond counting. I will consume you as I have consumed all others." Marcus Webb did not respond. There was no need for words. Tina Garrett had been building something for 4 months. Every spare moment, every safe house, every quiet night, she had worked on it. The device she now assembled was not a bomb in any normal sense. It was a gravitational anomaly generator, a weapon so dangerous that its construction was forbidden by a dozen galactic treaties. It created a localized black hole. A tiny one, just large enough to swallow the Overmind and everything within 200 meters. The black hole would last exactly 4.7 seconds. Long enough to consume the target. Short enough that the planet would survive. Tina looked at Marcus. Marcus nodded. She activated the device. The universe screamed. For 4.7 seconds, the laws of physics bent around them. Light twisted. Space warped. The Overmind, ancient and vast and supposedly eternal, was pulled inward into a point of infinite density. Its dying shriek echoed through the psychic network of the entire swarm. Then it was over. The black hole collapsed. The universe returned to normal. Where the Overmind had been, there was only empty space. Team 3 ran. The tunnels they had crawled through for 16 hours were now full of chaos. Drones ran in every direction. Their connection to the Overmind severed, their minds shattered by the sudden silence. Some attacked each other. Some simply stopped moving and died. Some fled in panic. None of them paid attention to the 6 humans racing toward the surface. Team 3 reached their extraction point as dawn broke over the dead world. A stealth ship, hidden in orbit for weeks, dropped to collect them. Behind them, the Mortith swarm was tearing itself apart. The hunt was over. The prey was dead. and humanity had just proven that there was nowhere in the galaxy where they could not reach. The death of the Mortith Overmind was felt across the galaxy. Every drone connected to the swarm's psychic network experienced the moment of its ending. The scream of a 40,000-year-old consciousness being crushed into nothing echoed through billions of minds. Some drones died instantly from the shock. Others went mad. Others simply stopped. Their purpose erased along with the mind that had directed them. Within hours, the swarm began to collapse. Drones turned on each other without the Overmind to coordinate them. Breeding pools produced monstrous failures without the Overmind to guide their growth. Ships drifted without purpose, their pilots mindless and confused. Within a week, the organized force that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia was reduced to scattered pockets of feral creatures. Within a month, even these remnants had consumed themselves. Within a year, the Mortith swarm existed only in history books and nightmares. The Galactic Council celebrated as it had never celebrated before. For the first time in recorded history, a true existential threat had been not just defeated, but eliminated. Species that had lived in fear for generations could finally breathe freely, and everyone knew who was responsible. Humanity was awarded a permanent seat at the highest level of council governance. This was an honor that normally required centuries of service and contribution. Humans received it after barely 50 years of galactic presence. No one objected. No one even considered objecting. Monuments were built on 100 worlds. Songs were composed in 1,000 languages. History was rewritten to include this new chapter. This story of impossible victory against impossible odds. But the beings who had witnessed the war firsthand knew a truth that the monuments could not capture. High Commander Zeth retired from military service 1 year after the war ended. She had served the Velkari for over 2 centuries. She had won famous victories and survived terrible defeats. But the Mortith War had changed her in ways she could not fully explain. She spent her retirement writing. The document she produced was titled Understanding Humanity, a Warning and a Guide. It took her 15 years to complete. When finished, it became required reading at every military academy in council space. The final chapter was titled The Special Forces Paradox. It began with a simple observation. "We made a mistake," she wrote. "A comfortable and dangerous mistake. We believed that humanity's elite warriors were somehow separate from their ordinary population. We imagined them as a different class of being, bred or engineered for violence. Fundamentally, unlike the farmers and merchants and scientists that make up most of human society." She described the humans she had met over her long career. Lisa Monroe, the diplomat who had smiled at predators. Kevin Marsh, the sergeant who had held the line at Epsilon 7. Ben Harris, the ghost who had cleared a path through 2 million Mortith. Marcus Webb, the hunter who had killed an ancient god. These were not genetic experiments, she wrote. They were not cybernetic constructs. They were not the products of secret programs or mysterious technologies. They were simply humans. Ordinary humans who had made an extraordinary choice. She explained what she had learned about human special forces selection. Most candidates failed. The training was deliberately designed to break them, to push them beyond any reasonable limit, to show them the absolute worst of what they might face. Those who quit were not punished or shamed. They were simply returned to regular service with honor. Those who remained were the ones who could not quit. Not because they were ordered to continue, not because they would be punished for stopping, but because something inside them refused to accept failure. Something inside them would rather die than give up. This quality exists in all humans, Zeth wrote. Not equally, not always visibly, but it is there. The potential is always there. She described watching human children play. They fell down and got back up. They lost games and demanded rematches. They faced challenges that should have frustrated them into quitting and instead kept trying until they succeeded or collapsed from exhaustion. When a human child skins their knee and gets back up to continue playing, she wrote, they are practicing the same determination that allowed Kevin Marsh to fight for 19 hours on Epsilon 7. She described watching human students study. They stayed awake through nights that would have killed other species. They pushed their minds past exhaustion, past pain, past all reasonable limits, because they wanted something badly enough to suffer for it. When a human student studies through the night for an examination, they are exercising the same focus that allowed Ben Harris's team to maintain combat awareness for 4 days without rest. She described the human concept of friendship, the way humans would risk their own safety to help those they cared about, the way they would sacrifice their own comfort to ease the suffering of others, the way they refused to abandon their companions even when logic demanded retreat. When a human refuses to leave a friend in difficulty, they are demonstrating the same loyalty that drove Marcus Webb's team through 4 months behind enemy lines without any hope of rescue. The final pages of her document contained her most important conclusion. The Mortis swarm made a mistake that cost them their existence. They saw human special forces and believed they were fighting a small group of exceptional individuals. They prepared countermeasures against specific tactics and specific weapons and specific abilities. They did not understand that they were fighting a species. Every human, from their youngest child to their oldest elder, carries within them the seed of what we saw on Nexus Prime. They are not born as warriors. They are not engineered for combat. They are simply human. And being human means refusing to accept limits. It means pushing beyond what should be possible. It means getting back up after every fall, trying again after every failure, fighting on after every defeat. This is not a military trait. This is not something that only special forces possess. This is what it means to be human. Their special forces are simply the humans who have developed this potential to its fullest extent. But the potential exists in all of them. Every single one. This is why humanity is the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Not because their elite warriors are exceptional. Not because their regular soldiers are formidable. But because any human, given the right circumstances and the right motivation, could become what we witnessed in the war. They are a species that decided evolution was too slow and took matters into their own hands. They conquered their planet not through natural superiority, but through pure, stubborn, relentless will. And now they are our allies. I find this both reassuring and terrifying in equal measure. Zethra died peacefully at the age of 407. Her death was marked across council space. Dignitaries from a dozen species attended her memorial. Among them was Marcus Webb. He was old now, retired from active service for many years. His hair had turned gray and his face was lined with age. But his eyes were the same as they had always been. Calm, quiet, watching. After the ceremony, a young Velkari journalist approached him. She was writing a feature about Zethra's legacy and wanted to include perspectives from those who had known her. You visited her every year, the journalist said. For decades. Why? You were enemies once, were you not? Marcus smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible, but it transformed his weathered face. We were never enemies, he said. We were allies who had not met yet. And after we met, we remained friends until the end. The journalist pressed further. High Commander Zethra wrote that humans terrified her. That even after decades of friendship, she never quite stopped being afraid of what your species represented. Did that not bother you? Marcus was quiet for a moment, looking out at the stars visible through the memorial hall's great windows. She was one of the few who really understood. He said finally. Understood what? He turned to face her. That we are not monsters. We are not superhumans. We are not some new form of life that the galaxy has never seen. We are just people. Ordinary people who decided that some things are worth any sacrifice. Who decided that giving up was never an option. Who decided to become more than we were because the alternative was unacceptable. He paused. Every human knows that feeling. The feeling of facing something impossible and choosing to fight anyway. The feeling of falling down and getting back up. The feeling of failing and trying again. We all know it. Our special forces just act on it more completely than most. The journalist recorded every word. This would become one of the most quoted passages in galactic literature. And honestly, Marcus added, his small smile returning, that is the part that should scare everyone. He walked away, leaving the journalist alone with her thoughts and her recorder. Outside, the stars shone in the eternal darkness of space. A galaxy that had once trembled before the Mortith swarm now lived in peace. A peace won by human blood and human will and human refusal to accept defeat. Somewhere out there, new threats were surely growing. New challenges were surely forming. New enemies were surely rising. It did not matter, because somewhere out there, humanity was waiting, and humanity had already shown the galaxy what it could do. The ordinary soldiers were terrifying enough. The special forces were something else entirely, and behind both of them stood a species of billions, each carrying the potential to become something that